Hello, everybody. We are live again. So it is week 3 or 4 or whatever. I don't even know now of quarantine. And we're continuing this series. It's week 3 for us for this series that we're doing. And it is called Surviving Quarantine by Spreading Life. And we are here every Monday through Thursday at 4:30 to just talk to y'all about spreading life and having experts in the field that can give that feedback back to you to bring a little bit of positive notes to your social feed and social media. And so I'm excited today because this is actually the first time Coach Jon is actually going to be on it.
Yes.
And I get to know him. So I'm super pumped that everybody gets to finally get to meet him on, I guess, social media aspect. So, Coach Jon, to get started, let's just introduce yourself. Tell us about yourself.
Sure. So I'm Jon. I'm currently living in Denver, Colorado, and I've been in the mental health field for about 10 years or so, doing a variety of different types of jobs. One of the things I'm doing currently right now is actually working as a mental health clinician within the Department of Corrections. But I have worked in a variety of different clinical mental health jobs, from working with children, teenagers, and adults, helping them kind of identify goals and using evidence-based strategies to be able to help them meet those goals.
I love that. And that's the thing that I love whenever it's like I've always said is that you're the most empathetic human I've ever met. It's like your ability to listen and not just listen, but it goes to the soul almost. Like you just have the ability to do that, which is, I think, is a very rare trait. So I appreciate you, and I'm blessed that you're part of our team. So to get started, let's talk about some of those strategies right now. What are some things that people can be doing to take care of their mind and especially deal with possible anxiety or discomfort or just this uncertainty and unknown that some people may be feeling?
Absolutely. I think that kind of the word self-care gets kind of thrown around a lot, and sometimes we don't really understand what that means. And I think it's going to mean something different for everyone. But I think just a handful of things that could be really good to start with is just doing some basic things to be able to take care of both our body and our mind. And so one of those is even just doing a simple breathing exercise could be incredibly important. One breathing exercise that comes to mind is actually breathing from your diaphragm. And sometimes it's called diaphragmatic breathing, and it's a lot of times it's used kind of in yoga, it's used in meditation, but it's that idea of not just kind of breathing from your chest, but actually kind of when you're breathing in, breathing and kind of forcing the air more into your diaphragm. And that actually sends signals to our whole nervous system to slow everything down. And that's so incredibly important, I think, especially now when there is so much uncertainty, when there's so much anxiety going on, that doing something for our bodies that we can be able to take care of ourselves, and that's also going to be able to take care of our mind too, because there's a lot of worry, a lot of different types of thoughts that are going around when we're dealing with this.
Yeah, I think too that what I like is that how it brings yourself back to homeostasis. So that's your home state of your body. And especially that's what a lot of these stressors do. It like psychs you up, or it gives you that anxiety and that gut feeling. So how can people, I've also found that a lot of people aren't even self-aware that they're even in a stressed environment. I even do that myself. It's not until I snap at somebody that I'm like, oh, got to take it back a little.
Absolutely.
So what are some things that people can do to be a little bit more self-aware of that from the beginning?
I would say definitely just being really aware of those times when you are starting to, like, you're realizing you're really irritated, and maybe reflecting back on that, saying if you're a parent with your kids and you're noticing, hey, this, your child is just making you a little bit more upset than normal, which is really, I think, is a really normal thing to happen when everyone is kind of in close quarters, really kind of everyone's on top of each other during this period of time. But I think that's probably the first thing I do, is if there's times where you're noticing that you're feeling a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, try to reflect back on that and kind of see a little bit of what happened before I was really feeling upset, and what were the consequences, like what were some of those things that happened after. And I also think another really good strategy is being really mindful to take a small period of time, either in the beginning of the day, at the end of your day, to be able to kind of reflect back, or either reflect back on the day or kind of reflect on what you'd like this day to be able to come, increasing that awareness of your emotions and yourself, and maybe what are some of the thoughts that are kind of going around in your mind, I think can be a really good starting point to be able to help you start to become aware of those, like, hey, this day might be a day where I need to do a little bit more of that self-care. I need to be able to take care of myself. So doing those periods of reflection, I think, can be really, really crucial.
I agree. And I think something I found too is that be adaptable in this space too. That it's that resiliency part that I seen where somebody wrote something. It's that it's not that I'm stuck inside, it's that I'm safe inside, is what it said. And so one thing that I think that really resonated with me is trying to, one, see that I am safe inside, give it a positive twist on my end. And then two, being adaptable to the situation of first day of getting with the kids and doing some of the stuff with them, saying per se their schoolwork, trying to get like the technology piece to work, and then also running my business. So I found that I've had to go to plan A, B, C, D, and I always joke there's the rest of the alphabet for a reason. So I think during this space, what is something that advice you can give on being resilient in this and not kind of getting stuck or perceiving the stuckness?
That's a really good question. I would say that it's a very difficult thing too. Resiliency can be a thing that kind of builds up over our entire lifetime. And I think times like these where things are so uncertain, they can be the times where we kind of highlight, hey, maybe I don't have as much resilience as I thought I did. And I would say one of the strategies that I would take with that is being really kind, starting off by being really kind to yourself, is, I think, incredibly important. And that's actually kind of, I think, building off of one of the other presentations from either last week or a few weeks ago with Darren. I think was talking a lot about that, of giving yourself some grace, giving yourself some kindness too. And I think that can be, I think it can be a really important part of that, because if we're beating ourselves up, that's just going to lower our resiliency. If we're kind of mentally almost attacking ourselves and kind of being guilty about the things that we're not doing when we're at home kind of during this quarantine, that can absolutely be something that lowers that resiliency level. So I think starting off by saying, hey, there's going to be times where I'm not going to be able to get this thing done, or I'm going to have a day where I'm not really doing anything. And that can be the start, I think, of building some of that resiliency, of terms of just taking it really day by day, learning from our successes and recognizing those successes that we have, even moment to moment.
So another thing that we talk a lot about is that this is going to have, like, this is the upturn of it, but there's also going to be a downturn of it. So of that aspect, there also is going to be a recovery period. And so what I think a lot of people right now are just or I don't want to generalize, but a few people I've seen be in a very reactive state right now because of the unknown. And so what I have a feeling is that it is going to hit its peak, and then they're seeing that the trajectory is going to go down, and then all the self-care and all this stuff is just going to like pop away.
Yes.
So how can we help people, or what advice could you give for the recovery period that will happen, that needs to happen after this, the process period that needs to happen after this?
No, it's such a good point, because I think exactly what you said is right. We just, as people, we sometimes do what we need to do to be able to get by in a certain situation. And then some of the things that got us by in that situation, we sometimes kind of put to the side. We just react in those moments too. And I think, I don't know, I think one thing that comes to mind is being as mindful and as present as we can in this moment when we're doing these types of strategies. So I think that potentially can lead to the most likely, increasing the likelihood that we can take some of those strategies with us during the kind of recovery period, during when we're getting on the downturn of this, and maybe hopefully things are starting to turn back to normal. I would think that would be one part of what I would say for that. I think another part is definitely being able to connect with the people that are important to us, and almost doing some type of kind of debriefing session, almost being able to connect with, doing, video chats, doing text messages, having calls, doing lots of different ways to be able to connect with people and talking about your own internal process, which can be really hard. It's even with the people that we're closest to, putting ourselves out there, being vulnerable like that can be hard, but I think it can be a really good process for that downturn when things are starting to kind of transition back into hopefully kind of some type of normalcy. Being able to connect with some other people, I think, would be a really, really good idea.
And that's the thing that I love, is the beauty that I'm seeing in it. And that's the one thing that I always want to talk to people about, is what good are you finding in this space and in this time? Because there's so much good that has actually came from it. And for me, it's been getting to connect with people. As I was telling you today or earlier, that we were helping or trying to help find masks for a certain subset of people that really need it, that are in the line of duty right now, and they don't have masks currently. And so for that aspect, there's been so many people that I'm just like, oh, I'm going to go ask. And and that's the thing, is the asking part. And it's so easy. Like, I think for us, we put a lot of information out on, or we get this thought that it's going to be very difficult. It's going to be very difficult to ask. But it was like, I was like, I have a dream team here, and I'm just going to ask them. I'm going to try. And like, replies like that, and so I don't want to lose that. I don't want to lose that generosity and that give back, and that just wanting to give back to the greater good during this period of time. That's one of my fears. So how can we maintain that going forward? Because again, I'm going to relate it back. It's not fully relatable back to 9/11, but it does, for me, it does have some resonance with it. Like, it was a time that everybody came together and we all remembered, and then we forgot. And I don't want people to forget. So what are some things that people can do to remember?
I would say maybe kind of each person making their own kind of individual goal that they want to have, because everyone has kind of different personalities and different ways of engaging kind of with other people. Some people like lots of engagement. Other people want probably kind of much more minimal engagement. But I think that connection, just of us as people, all of us to some degree need that engagement and connection with others. And I think the best way to be able to do that is each person individually coming up with how you want to be able to maybe take some of the lessons that are learned during this period of time and continue that, and maybe tell it to somebody that's close to you. Tell it to a partner, tell it to a best friend, tell it to a family member. And so they can potentially be able to hold you accountable. Maybe during this period of time, you can take sometimes say, hey, I want to be able to make sure that we're still checking in, on a weekly basis, or, every few months, or just checking on each other's lives and seeing how we're doing. And by speaking that goal, you can be able to sometimes make that a reality than just having that internally within yourself. So I think that's a big way I would do that, by creating that goal and then telling somebody else so they can help keep you accountable.
And that's too, if you reach out to anybody in the audience, one, if you have any questions, put them up. We'd love to answer them. But two, if you don't feel like you have a unit or a group of people to talk to, Coach John is one of our coaches, and he would be so glad to speak with you as well.
Yeah,
to be able to navigate you, do your goal, make your own custom goal to you that works. And that's the thing, is if we can't be that assistance, and on top of that, all of our services we waive for free for this reason, because it is the time to give back. And our reasoning is, our mission is to create a space for accountability, connection, and life-changing results. Connection is needed. Just because it's social isolation does not mean that it's social distancing or disconnecting. We need to continue with that connection aspect. And I want to highlight real quick, I love this, and I don't know if y'all can see it. Oh, here it is. But it says, "And the sun rose." This is actually talking about social connection. One of my good friends made this, and I'll put a link to it in the comments below. I don't know if she's sold out yet, But this hat, it is about COVID-19, but I think it is so beautiful in the aspect that this was a give back opportunity, and that all the proceeds went to feed people in Chattanooga, went to the food bank. And the creativity that people are finding in this, making the mask, or finding ways that they can just use a little bit of their gifts to be able to give back in this spirit. What does that do to the brain? Let's talk about that, some of the psychology aspect of it, of giving back and finding the good. What does that do for us, and why is it so needed for our health?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's something that just it generally, there's probably a lot of biology that actually, happens with the brain, but I think just kind of emotionally, it's something that just kind of, it makes us feel kind of so much better too, when I think sometimes when we can be able to have those connections, and even if they're in really small ways, with other people too. And it's something where sometimes it can build upon itself. There's this idea of just kind of behavioral activation, which is almost this idea of we start doing something and it helps kind of get the ball rolling with that. And I think that I really see that kind of playing with giving back too, that sometimes even if we're able to do something small within just kind of our own sphere of influence, that sometimes that can be able to have a cascade effect of other people doing that. And so it's not only helping our own kind of mental health and our own well-being, but helping the community around us too, which I think just it has this really lovely cascade effect that we're taking care of ourselves, taking care of our community, and then everyone else is kind of hopefully doing that with the people around them. So I think it's an amazing idea and something really, really important to do during this time.
I love it. Awesome. So again, if anybody has any comments, feel free to put them over there. Again, we were talking to Coach Jon, who has a background as a mental health professional. And I say you're one of the most unique people, because I know that you work in the inmate system. And then you also, I know that you have helped with suicide hotlines.
Yes, absolutely.
So I don't want to go into the morbid per se. That can be somebody that, but I know as a mental health first aid instructor that it's big about talking openly about suicide right now, and to people, and reaching out and asking the question, do you feel like you could kill yourself? It's a very difficult question to ask.
It is, yeah.
But it's something that's needed. So talk about that right now for people that may be down, or may have suicidal ideations, or may have some of those aspects. What are some things that they can reach out, or how can they find ways to be helped in this time?
No, I think that's so important too, because I think in the middle of this just really unique time in our history, I think a lot of people are, being a little bit more open about talking about their emotions, but there is still so much stigma for when our emotions and our thoughts get to the point where we're actually having suicidal thoughts too. And I think it can really be, there's a variety of different ways that I would recommend people being able to reach out. You could absolutely, and it has to be individual to that person. So if a person felt comfortable talking with somebody that's close to them, talking with a partner, a family member, a friend, could be a way to start. But there's a lot of people who they may not have those individuals in their lives, or they may not feel comfortable. That may be their barrier, their boundary, where they're saying, I don't want to talk about this with these people that are closest to me. And so what I would recommend is being able to call a local crisis line. And there's a variety of different ways. If you call the National Lifeline number, I believe it's 1-800-273-8255. It uses your area code and will route you to the closest crisis line that's in your area. And usually most kind of major metro areas and most states will have a local kind of crisis line where there's trained mental health professionals there that can be able to confidentially talk with you about some of these things that are going on, and where they can actually ask you some of these open questions like, are you having suicidal thoughts? Would you like to get connected with some resources, mental health resources in your community, or even just resources for financial aid resources, housing resources? All of those are incredibly important within this period of time. There's also something that I think is really good for people to know, peer support lines as well. So these aren't specifically mental health trained individuals, but these are individuals who have lived experience with mental health issues. So it could be with mood disorders, with anxiety disorders, and they can talk with you kind of on that personal aspect of saying, hey, I've dealt with this, and these are some of the strategies that have really helped me. And so if you're not feeling like you'd really want to talk with a mental health professional, sometimes people feel a little bit more comfortable talking with another person who maybe has gone through some of those things, the same things that they're going through at that moment.
I love that. And I know that they have it not just for suicide, they also have it for anxiety, they have it for depression, they have it for other areas too. So
absolutely.
We will get a link, and I'll get some more information put out for finding ways that you can get to the peer specialist, or also any hotlines. I know NAMI is a big one.
Yes, absolutely.
So that's a great resource. So it's National Association of Mental, or I'm butchering it right now, but I'll look it up again. But
yeah, I think it's National Alliance on Mental Illness. Yeah.
Yes. So here's a question that somebody's put up. What is some of the coping skills that we can be doing to help us get through all this that is going on right now? What are some coping skills that people can have? No, actually.
Oh, absolutely. I would say definitely like one of the skills that we talked about kind of more towards the beginning of this, of just sometimes doing something as simple as making ourselves stop and actually taking a breath and kind of doing some of that deep breathing, I think can be incredibly important to take care of our bodies and our minds. One way that's it's a little bit harder, it definitely requires kind of some more practice too, but is making sure that we're having some ways to be able to challenge some of the worries and the negative thoughts that are coming into our mind at that time. And this is something where I don't want people to get kind of discouraged if this doesn't work right away, because this can take a while to be able to do. But I think over time and with some practice, this really can be a strategy that can help when we're having a lot of these different worries, especially during this time. We're worried about the future. We're worried about what's tomorrow going to look like. And so one way of doing this is being able to challenge some of the thoughts that just come into our mind. So oftentimes we may have these thoughts of just, the world is potentially falling apart. Why, I'm not going to have a job. I'm not, and these may be realities, but sometimes these are things that our mind puts out that may not actually be true. And so sometimes saying something simple to ourselves, like, what's the evidence that I know this is true, and actually thinking that to ourselves when we start having these thoughts can be a simple way to start challenging that and kind of like actually just make our mind stop a little bit in that moment. So that's one. I think those are two big kind of coping skills that I would recommend: challenging some of those automatic, negative anxiety thoughts, and then doing something kind of for both our body and mind, such as taking a deep breath when we're noticing that we're feeling some of those physical symptoms of anxiety. If our heart's beating, if we're kind of feeling a little sick to our stomach, if we're sweating a little bit, taking a deep breath, being able to kind of reset ourselves and use that to be able to continue forward throughout the day.
And I love that, because I learned that from Dr. Amen of Amen Clinics. And it's called killing the ants is what he calls it. So automatic negative thoughts.
Yes.
And so it's that principle is you hear a negative thought, then you ask, is it true? And then you ask for the evidence of it. And then especially in this space too, if we feel like our spouse or somebody is we're seeing them also in a negative light or as a stressor, attacker. So in the stress responses, you have to have, fight, flight, or freeze. So if you're starting to make your spouse or your kids the bear that's attacking you, we have to look at the evidence and see if they actually are a bear, if they're really going full out as we may perceive in our sensitivity at this time, because we can be sensitive at this time. So the thing that he says is to ask, is it true? Challenge that thought again, and then turn it on the reverse. And feel that feeling. So if I say that my husband does not care, I turn that in reverse and say, well, first, is there evidence for it? Two, what if he did care? How would I feel? And then three, turning it again on reverse, saying, I don't care about him. And that usually shuts the thought down, because whenever it's towards somebody else, you usually don't perceive them as a bear or a lion attacking, because there's not much reality to it. So that's the other thing that I found is not only self, but also family, making sure that our stimulus of stress response is kind of correct and that we can keep it in check, per se.
Absolutely. And I think this is where it's also really important to be kind to yourself too, because doing a strategy like this can be sometimes really frustrating. And sometimes it can increase some of the irritability and anxiety that can come with this. If we're trying to do something positive for ourselves and maybe it's not working in the way that we would like, it could be really, really frustrating. So being able to kind of give ourselves some of that that kindness and grace and say, hey, I'm trying this. I know it may not work. Kind of doing some of those things in our mind, saying, "Hey, I'm doing something positive for myself. It may not necessarily work this time, but it may work. It may work tomorrow, or it may, even if it helps lower the intensity of those physical feelings that we have, that's a win. Even just a little bit. Even if it's just moving the volume down a little bit on some of our thoughts and some of our emotions, just a little bit. That's us gaining a little bit of control, which I think is really, really important."
Because and that's what we talk about, especially in goals and stuff that we make, is that it's not about perfection, it's about progression. Strive for that right now, just one day better. And even if it's just a little bit, that's all that matters. It's just that wanting and that need, that we have a legacy on this earth, and that whenever, because that's the thing that I've talked about in the past is, I don't know what you would call it. I like to talk to people that are in their 90s and older, like love to talk to older people and just ask them, like, if you could reflect back on your life, what is some of the things that you would tell us? Like, what's the best advice that you can give us? Because they've lived it. And that's the one thing I typically hear is about leaving a legacy, is that continuation of wanting to leave a legacy for people. And so not putting that much stress on yourself to have it, but it's just a day at a time. That's how you do it. And that's it. Just caring one day at a time.
Absolutely.
So I know that we're at the end. I want to give space if anybody else wants to ask questions. Please go ahead and do that now. And I'm going to show also our link for Get Back to You. Remember, you can schedule a call with Coach Jon, and we have other amazing coaches for free. We have waived all of our service fees, all of our fees, because this is a time when people need people. And again, it's our goal to stay connected. And if you do want to connect specifically with Jon, you can go to www.workzbe.com/Coach Jon, and he will be happy to speak with you as well. Again, all of it is free. And he is a trained mental health professional, but also our goal is to work on the prevention and the consultation side. So we don't give therapy. We don't do those aspects of it. Ours is about being preventative and proactive instead of reactive. And so that's the space that we are here for y'all. So. Absolutely. But I appreciate everybody hopping on, and I appreciate you, Jon. It was such a blessing to get to talk to you as always. So,
thank you so much for this opportunity and to be able to talk with you and everyone else out there. This is a really, really important time, and I think it's good for us to be doing these types of things, to be able to kind of connect with everyone and kind of sharing some of these skills that hopefully can help some people.
Awesome. Oh, I got one comment here. Let's see. Oh, good talk. Thank you, Nathan. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Well, y'all have a blessed one. Stay well.
Take care. Thank you.